Singapore is committing 8 billion Sing dollars to continue supporting workers and businesses amid the COVID-19 pandemic. It will fund the latest support measures, which come on top of those set out in 4 earlier budgets. Deputy Prime Minister Heng Swee Keat said there are no plans to draw on past reserves for this one. Now, for more insights, we're joined by Ho Meng Kit, CEO of the Singapore Business Federation. Mr. Ho, thank you very much for joining us. Now, we know that the government had consulted the Singapore Business Federation on its views for such support measures. So what exactly did SBF suggest during this meeting? And, is it what was just announced sufficient for businesses?
He came twice last week to consult us. And he kind of said that measures cannot be extended indefinitely at the same level. We understand that because it's very expensive. But we also told him that it's also not possible for government to withdraw the measures immediately because business sentiments are still very poor. And businesses still grappling with cost issues, managing their cash flow. So the top concerns for businesses is really to get some assistance on cash flow management. So we said that some extension of the job support scheme is needed.
Yeah, Mr. Ho, speaking of the job support scheme, it will be extended, covering wages paid up to March 2021. It's mostly cash given to companies to save jobs. What can the SBF do to ensure that businesses are making the best use of the JSS during this time?
We had a survey done of our businesses just last week, and unanimously they were in full support of not only the job support schemes but also other measures to help companies manage cash and cash flow. So they say that the job support scheme was very effective in helping them do so. So I think what is important in this round is not just the extension but also the extension of the job support scheme for 7 months. I think this is a very long extension. I think it provides a good runway, and I think it provides a good certainty for our companies to now plan ahead. We know that there is a certain level of support, and therefore companies would need to get on with planning what their next move are. I think what is also significant in this supplementary budget was an additional scheme on job growth initiative. It is to incentivize companies. It's not cheap, $1 billion given to incentivize companies to create jobs, and particularly for mature workers. We hope that will also help companies who are in sectors which are still growing.
All right, you mentioned that planning ahead. The job support scheme is also tapering. Doesn't it give urgency now to think of ways to transform their businesses? So how do you think businesses can do that then?
Well, I give you 2 examples. One is a broader one. As a result of COVID-19, supply chain resilience becomes very important. So the virus started from China, and many countries and companies want to move some of their supply chain out of China, but they don't want to move it completely out. So some of the supply chains will come to our part of the world, to ASEAN. So countries like Vietnam, countries like Indonesia will benefit. So if these 2 countries benefit, Singapore would also benefit because we set up industrial estates there. We trade with Vietnam and Indonesia a lot. We service those 2 economies. So I think that's one way in which our companies can take part in this transformation. The other one is more sector specific. We've got a member company in the textile industry, for example. They're doing garments, but the demand for garments has disappeared. But what they've done is that they've kept their core capability. Now they are manufacturing personal protection equipment. So shifting, using their capability to manufacture something which is now in demand. So this is how, for example, a company can use its core capability and shift to another sector, another product which is currently in demand.
Mr. Ho, I'd like to ask you about the jobs growth incentive. This supports and a company pays salaries for hiring of mature workers. How effective do you think this will be to get firms to do just that? And what are some of the barriers or concerns with it?
I think that it will be effective because this is the if you look at it, we've been doing some of the work for the government in terms of the SG United traineeship. That was actually very much in demand, largely because government was prepared to pay up to 80% of the trainee stipends of fresh graduates. So many companies actually have applied for it. Now we are switching to traineeship for mid-career, and I think some incentive to hire workers will be very effective. I would say that it will be particularly more effective for companies who are doing well, because for companies who are not doing well, it's not possible for them to, even with the incentive, to create jobs. But for companies that are doing well, some amount of incentive will help. So that's why the level of support is set at 25 to 50%, depending on the age. I think the key really is that this has to incentivize companies to hire mature workers. This is the target audience. Now, the problem, I think, is not about just the companies hiring the mature workers, is the mature workers prepared to work with this company. Our survey shows that for some mature workers, wages earned could be an issue. So I think there's also an expectation for some of the mature workers to learn and leave at one sector to come to work in another sector. Some flexibility and change of mindset and attitude was also needed on the part of the mature workers to make this scheme work.
Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, Mr. Ho Meng Kit, CEO of the Singapore Business Federation.